everybody, this is Danny with the Legendary Muscle, and today I'm here with Bob and his 1964 F-85 Olds Cutlass. Thanks for being on the show.
Oh, it's great to have you here again.
We really enjoyed you and your wife being here. Luckily, she did not call the cops. She's a lovely person. Anyway, Bob, tell me a little bit about this car.
Well, the car itself is, from my perspective, has an unseen value that people don't understand. But my very first, what I'll call my very first real job, I had jobs since I was about 10, but my real first job was working for an Oldsmobile dealer in 1964. That's when this car was born.
Okay.
It was actually in 63 that I started there, but at the time when the 64 model year was launched, and also prior to the 442 being launched. How I found the car was my son-in-law, about a year and a half before I was fixing to retire. He knew Eileen and I were out looking at 65 GTOs, and we happened to be zeroed in on a red convertible, 65 GTO convertible. That was a lot of money, and the car wasn't all that nice, and so that kept us looking. And Mike had sent me this link to a website in Nevada, where this car happened to be, and I followed it for almost a whole year and a half.
Oh wow!
And lost track of it about, I want to say 2 months before I retired. And about a week or two before my retirement, I happened to stumble onto it again on a website, and believe it or not, in Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin. And it was by an individual who bought a bunch of cars and wanted to start his own classic car place. Well, he had bought this car at the Hot August Night auction in Reno, Nevada. So that's where it went. And anyhow, my first day of retirement, I got up in the morning, and she knew I wanted to go look at this thing. And I said to her, Eileen, why don't we hop in a pickup truck and I'm going to run up to Green Bay to look at that Oldsmobile. I won't say exactly how she put this, but she said, what the heck you want with a friggin' Oldsmobile? We drove up there, and like I said, he was trying to start this business.
Gotcha.
And this car looked really great in pictures. And in the time frame I first started looking at it versus when I went up to look at it, there was more damage to it than had been before. And the car was really kind of rough. Had a cracked oil pan, big oil puddle underneath the car.
Oh, wow.
We spent 3.5 or maybe 4 hours up there. I was on my back, crawling around the floor, looking at things. And to be honest, I could not believe I was looking at what we were looking at there. The car had so much originality to it. It was incredible. The bones were just unbelievably nice.
Okay.
So fact is, if I were to put this up in the lift and you and I walked underneath it, they would look like about a 4 or 5 year old car that had never seen salt.
Oh wow.
That's how nice it is.
Not for Nevada.
The car history itself from that point on, to finish that thought though, my first job was working at 64 at an Oldsmobile dealership. My first day of retirement, I acquired this car. So it's kind of like bookends. My career was somewhere in the middle. So that's one of the reasons we're so tied to this car. And today, Eileen is really hot on muscle cars, and she just absolutely loves this car.
So pretty much the car inside is pretty much original. Did you do any modifications inside?
Actually, the interior was, to my knowledge, was all original. We went up until about 2 years ago. The driver's seat finally started to crack, and I had Mr. Keys here in Ocala redo the seats and make a new tonneau cover for it for the top.
Now, how many of these were made actually as a convertible? Do you know?
Well, F-85s in not 442s, because you got to separate the two. The history of the 442 is this, that GM had already launched a GTO, and Buick was doing a Skylark already, I think, the Grand Sport. And Oldsmobile was kind of following along in a late state. And the first 442, the best I can tell, was somewhere around April Fool's Day is when the first one was sold. This particular car was built 1 month and a day before. And from the build sheet that I found underneath the back seat, and decoding that, I suspect this is what they call a pilot build.
Okay.
This particular car was built just like the 442, except it didn't say 442 on it. Now, to tell that real quick, Oldsmobile, in a simple way to launch the 442, what they did is they were already building police option F-85s, and they had, in the police option, they had special chassis. They had I think it was a 310 horse, 330 4-barrel V8, which the normal 330 4-barrels were like 280 horse, so they were slightly different. And the police option allowed you to have any transmission you wanted, and they all came at the time as standard with 355 posi rear ends. So the police option car was very unique. What I discovered is that this was a police option F-85 convertible. How many police option convertibles you suppose there were?
Right.
So it makes this car kind of very rare. Sad part is when I acquired it, none of the original stuff was there because it already had a 455 in it and a piece of junk 4-speed in it. It was pretty nasty car.
Maybe they're thinking about putting in a police parade or something like that.
Yeah, right. The police are always chasing me. I may as well stop and tell them the story, right?
Right. So I love the stance on this car, and you got some nice rims. What kind of rims are those? Those are Kragers, right?
Those are Kragers. And again, at the time frame I bought this car, the modern era was kind of blending in, the low-profile tires and whatever. And I wanted the car to look original in terms of the body stuff, but give it a sense of modernization.
Gotcha.
And it just so happened Krager came out with the 17-inch wheels at about the same time. And that's what I put on. They're 17x8s all the way around, all the same.
So being 17x8s, you have disc brakes on this, or are they drums still?
Okay, that changed a lot. If you want me to get into the whole modification story. What's on there currently is 13-inch narrow disc brakes in the front. They're from ECI, Engineered Components Inc. Mark from ECI, I've done a few things for him, and likewise he's helped me out a lot. But originally when we did this car, it had 11-inch discs in the front. And the stock rear end was the Oldsmobile rear end with drum brakes. And when I did the LS mods and whatever, I quickly discovered it wasn't going to stop too easily. So I got a hold of ECI, and we upgraded the front to 13-inch brakes with the large GM calipers. They're actually, there's calipers on here off a GM's General Motors pickup truck.
Oh, okay.
Because the 13-inch calipers are thicker, and the pickup truck calipers look like a Chevelle, for example, but they're wider for the wider mouth.
Oh, okay.
And then in I don't remember the exact date, 2019, 2020, somewhere in that time frame, I believe, I got a little skeptical about the rear end living through the abuse I was putting through it, and I ordered a rear end through a company in Iowa, a custom-built 9-inch Ford that was narrowed slightly. Nice. And it came with I ordered it with Cadillac Seville disc brakes, so there's 11-inch disc in the back and 13s in the front.
Okay, that's nice. Now. So what kind of suspension do you have on it?
That kind of evolved over time as well. It's kind of like the 55. What's on it right now is when I did the engine swap down here in 2017, that enabled me. I always wanted to change the lower control arms on them because the bushings were warped, kind of bad. But with the Oldsmobile engine that was in it, the only way I could get it certain faster is I would have had to pull the engine out. So I kept postponing that. And anyhow, with the LS in there now, it made things a whole lot easier to work on. So I put tubular control arms on it. I also had to lower it some more because that LS engine weighed 260 pounds less than the Oldsmobile did. So I took a lot of weight out. And so the lower control arms are such that took 1.5 inches of height out of it just by putting the control arms on it.
Okay.
The rear is, they don't make them anymore, but they're Edelbrock box control arms, blowers, and the uppers are adjustable. Did have box in it when I bought the car on the top, but I took them out in order to adjust the pinion angle and get it where it should really need to be. Plus both the front and the back have extremely heavy duty sway bars on it. Car handles very well.
Handles good, huh?
Especially with the low profile tires. That was the whole idea.
Less shift of rubber.
Hello.
Gotcha. So you said LS, huh?
Yeah.
So you think we can have a look at it?
Again, you're wanting me to give away trade secrets.
Yep.
Well,
oh, wow.
Danny, there's where it all happened.
Wow.
Now, what you're looking at is a 2009 Corvette LS3 that Mike Chuchin actually helped me acquire, and he was very helpful in making this whole thing work. In fact, a good deal of the work was done by Mike. I originally wanted him to do this whole project. I was going to contract him to do that. So one thing led to another in his life. He had some issues, and then I helped him through moving into a new shop. And as it turned out, I ended up doing a lot of the work up there in his shop, and then I got it to a point where I was in their way, and then I flatbedded it here and finished the whole thing up here.
That's a beautiful looking engine.
Yeah, the engine, just a call out, Mike Carpenter from Speedline up in Ocala is the individual that helped me get the thing running initially, because I did so many modifications, cams and what have you. And when I first got it running, it had the wrong throttle body on it. It had an LS2 mass airflow sensor, so there were a lot of things we had to kind of blend around. In fact, it didn't have no cold air system on it at all. And at that time, Mike Carpenter did some minor tuning for me, had it on the dyno, and at that time it made 468 horsepower at the rear wheel, which translates to like 520 horse or so at the crank. Since that point in time, Mike Carpenter got me warmed up to doing HB tuners. That's what he uses. And I ended up buying my own HB tuners and got into tuning. In fact, I've got probably 30 or 40 different tunes already for this car. And got into doing it myself and put the cold air system in it. And I suspect the car, I can't prove this in any way, but I suspect it makes closer to 540 horse now.
540, huh?
Which is pretty significant. And one last thing. Everybody's heard of a W30 Oldsmobile. They had 442 W30s, and what the original ones had two big rectangular air scoops under the underside of the bumper that they brought in cold air for. Well, I had been monitoring this thing out on the road with my computer hooked up, and I noticed how hot the inlet air temperature was. That's when I went to this longer cold air tube with the air cleaner down in that corner. And this may look a little Mickey Mouse, but that's what I made, was covers around it, and underneath I fabricated a air scoop that draws air into a big hole just below here. And believe it or not, it took like 30 degrees of intake air temperature out of so cold air is getting in that baby now. Oh, and the last thing with the HP tuner, what I taught myself to do, because I never done this before, and what I discovered is this has got a 4L70E transmission in it, which is automatic. It's computer controlled as well. And where the fun factor really came into play is when I started tuning the transmission. It made this thing much more lively. At part throttle stuff, it's just woke it up real good. Oh, yeah, unbelievable. Covers here, those are actually from Edelbrock. Those are actually coil brackets. So the coils are mounted to the underside of that. And then I did my own thing with the Oldsmobile on it. Everybody wants to know where I bought the Oldsmobile covers, but those are actually Edelbrock coil brackets is what they are. And they hide a lot of the wiring and stuff.
It gives it that old school look.
Yeah, kind of makes it look a little bit like a big block Chevy in some regards.
So what kind of radiator do you have on this one?
Well, that particular radiator came from Summit, and I had that in there when I first bought the car. I put that in it with the Oldsmobile motor. It had a 455 out to 462 cubic inches when I first put it on the road. And as you can well imagine, the big black Olds were pretty difficult to cool, but it's a triple pass radiator. And I was able to figure out ways to use this along with the LS motor.
Great.
So it's a Summit radiator. It was a race only that I had to make stuff to make it work. You know, that was my thing.
All right. So do you think we can take a ride on this?
Oh, I suppose.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's a great day for a ride, eh?
Yeah.
In Florida.
All right, let's go. All right. So Bob, tell me, why did you pick this particular engine for this car?
Well, that was like I started telling you privately. I was originally one that just put air conditioning in here in 2017 after he moved to Florida. One lives in Florida long enough, you realize you need to have air conditioning.
Yeah.
Anyhow, the components I needed to put an air conditioning compressor and all the other elements to support that on this car with the old 455 that was in it, it was the same basic components I needed for an LS swap.
Okay.
And Mike Chuchin from Ocala, he had a LS3 that he was building for a guy, which is this engine here. And then the guy later on decided that he would just buy one of them new Z06 motors. That's when they came out with that 650 horse Z06. So this thing was sitting there partially built already. In fact, he had it pretty much all done.
Oh, okay.
And Mike gave me a hell of a deal on it, such that I was able to sell the motor and trans out of here and pretty much not have a whole lot of additional money in that motor. I did spend a lot of money on building the motor and doing the other things.
Yeah.
So. But that's kind of how we got down that path. I needed a front runner system. That's the elements on the front of the engine with the alternator and air conditioning compressor, all of that. I would have needed that on the Olds, and the cost of that for the Olds versus this is the same. And the problem the Olds had is in order to run that or any other air conditioning, I would have had to take off the mechanical fuel pump. So that meant a different fuel tank because I wanted the fuel pump in the tank. When I looked through all of those things and knowing Mike had that LS3 there, it was kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
You know? And like I said, through the help of Mike Chuchin, because Mike taught me a lot about LS motors, and I've had this one all apart since then. I've gotten to the point now where I'd much rather build one of these than a small block Chevy. They're really simple. As complicated as they may look to some people, they're really simple and.
Well,
a lot of elements.
It looks like a lot of people are going towards this nowadays. For me, back in the day, it was like, no, carbureted. It has to be carbureted. They sound beautiful and everything. But you know what? These newer engines with the right exhaust, the right tune and everything, they sound really good too. And a lot of people are actually starting to go more towards these engines. Right. I think because of reliability being one, and it's just they're just nice engines and they're easy to work on. And
right. You know, the interesting thing is when I first put this car on the road in 07, that first year we pieced it together to drive it, and on the stock speedometer then I had I put 12,000 miles on it that first summer.
Oh, okay.
And when I pulled that engine out of here to do the LS swap, I had somewhere around 33,000 miles on the car then. And right now the car says 2007. I put 90,000 miles on here.
90,000 miles.
Yeah. So the LS motor that's in here has got 45,000 miles already on it since I put it in here.
Yeah. And you could pretty much grab this and go anywhere with it, huh?
Oh hell yeah, we've been everywhere. This car, since I finished it with the LS motor, we've taken this up to back to the 50s, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and back twice. I mentioned that I think before to you with our 37 Ford too. In fact, 2 weeks ago we just had that up to we took that to Louisville, Kentucky for the NSRE National. So they got a lot of miles on it. This thing got 90,000 miles on it. And to that end, the first owner of this car had it for 27 years, I believe. And the guy that had it before me bought it with 55,000 miles on it. And when I bought it, it had 89,000 miles on it. So that means the car has about 180,000 miles on it.
Now, do you ever, because this being a convertible, do you ever get the urge just to go down the coastline towards Daytona or anywhere and just put the top down and
we've
take a relaxing drive?
Yes, we've done that a lot. It's a fun car, and down here, tops down pretty much all winter long.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to understand that. But winter cruising down here is such that you enjoy the convertible, and that's the time to have a convertible. But if you caught the front plate on the car, it says top or not.
Yeah.
And what that means is that's my choice, top or not. and in the summer, because of the heat and humidity down here, I choose the top days because I can sit in here as we are now with the air conditioning going. It's a whole lot more comfortable.
So does Eileen actually drive this car?
She has a couple times, not often though. As you learn from doing her 55, the 55 is her car.
Yeah.
And that's her love of life. She's driven this and also has driven our 37, but she preferred to drive her 55.
Okay. So you were telling me something about the paint on this car.
Oh yeah. When I bought the car, as nice as it looks today, it didn't look quite that nice when I bought it. And the paint that's on here was a PPG brand paint. And best I can tell, it was painted somewhere in the real late 1980s to extremely early 1990s. And it's a PPG paint, and it's a color clear, so it's a two-part process. And I believe the guy that had it before me, that was the one thing he thought he had the capability of doing was painting. But when I bought the car, I was full of dents and dings, and I was planning to do paint body on it. A real good friend of mine by the name of Mark Rappel was a dent wizard in Milwaukee, and he had called me and wanted me to do some performance work on his Harley. So it was right after I bought the car, and I said, Mark, I got about a day and a half in your bike. Bring out your tools and see what you can do in a day and a half. Well, when he finished, I was totally amazed at how straight the car looked. In fact, this door here was all caved in from people trying to shut the door. The latch was broke. And I defy anybody to see where that was. Well, after he got done doing that, I got to thinking about the paint, and I spent a couple weeks sanding, and I took off so much paint off of this thing you wouldn't believe it. It never did get down to the color. That's how much clear it had on it. It had runs in it. Anyhow, after doing that and some wet sanding and buffing, this is what it has. When I came to Florida, because the car had quite a few miles on it, the front of the car had some stone chips and whatever from living in Wisconsin. And I already had gained some confidence in Mike Chuchin's ability to paint from Twisted Garage. And I had Mike paint from the molding up and the back of the doors forward of the whole front of the car. And we had no idea what this paint actually was. And he not only did a hell of a job matching paint, but you can see the quality of the paint was just incredible. The guy's amazing.
That's a beautiful color too. And it rides really smooth. I mean, you weren't kidding when you said it handles good. Now your AC system you got in here, because this doesn't look like vintage air or anything like that. Who makes this?
All right, the air conditioning system, I acquired the front runner system with the air conditioning compressor from March, and Mike Chuchin's brother Doug is a March dealer, and at the time he was also selling stuff for Nostalgic Air, which is out of Ocala. And through Doug Chuchin, I got to know George a little bit from Nostalgic Air, and anyhow, that's kind of how the story went. And although it's not a vintage air like everybody else uses, I'm pretty pleased with how well it works.
Yeah, it works pretty good.
And a convertible down here, they're hard to cool a convertible, especially one with a black top.
Yeah, you got a lot of all the coolness starts to escape through the top and everything, and you got the heat from the sun.
If you sit at a stoplight long enough, you'll find out how well the black works in attracting heat.
Yeah, I feel it. I wear black shirts all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the time you gave us on this ride. Is there anybody you want to give a shout out to or anything?
Well, the one person that we talked about, Mike Chuchin, with Eileen's 55 from Twisted Garage. But when I started this project, I didn't have any tuning capability of my own. I didn't have a program to do it.
Uh-huh.
And Mike Chuchin recommended I talk to this Mike Carpenter from Speedline
Yeah.
up in Ocala. And Mike was extremely helpful in getting this thing going initially. And at that time, it was pieced together with some stuff that didn't belong on it. It had an LS2 mass airflow sensor, lots of stuff that was weird.
Gotcha.
But he not only tuned it pretty well at that time, it made some pretty decent power. It made like 468 horsepower at the rear wheel with the screwed up system that was on it. I was pretty impressed. But then through working with him, he gave me some confidence level of using HP tuner, and I went out and bought my own tuner, and I've been doing my own tuning. And it's a big thanks to Mike Carpenter for that.
That sounds good to me. So everybody, if you liked the episode today, like and subscribe. From Bob to Danny, appreciate your time. See ya.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. You know, you did ask me if Eileen's car was fast, but you never did ask that question on my Oldsmobile.
Oh, that's right.
So, you know, we got to give some kind of a demonstration to the people watching just what this thing's capable of doing. Not bad from a rolling start.
Oh, very good from a rolling start. I felt those wheels spin for a while. All right, everybody. Too bad you're not here. Bye.